Give him a chance to farm. Today we're going to just do a little bit of a talk of a couple of the books that we kind of refer back to once in a while. I know on a few of the rotational grazing videos I've made mention to Gabe Brown and his book Dirt to Soil. So for those of you that this is his book, and he basically talks to you in there about how he was able to use his cattle, and they raise hair sheep also, and they have tried pigs, those kind of things. They do pastured chickens, and he also does row crop farming as well. So he would talk about going into the field and planting it and coming back through with cover crops, using pigs to turn soil, those kind of things. And then he also talked about grazing fields with cattle, and then going back in and cover cropping it, and a rotational grazing, to the point where he was able, over a time period, to initially start reducing the amount of chemicals that he needed to use on his farm. And then the other thing that he was able to do with his cattle was, because he was able to have enough land to rotate them to different paddocks and give the other ground rest, he was improving his soil health as well, but he was also improving his herd health, because he was basically recreating in a controlled setting what the animal would be doing in the wild, because the animal's actually only going to eat in a certain area, and then it's going to move on because the predators are going to be kind of moving in to push the cows. So they're going to kind of stay in a tighter herd, so your stock density is higher. So there's things on that to look at, so you need to figure out how productive that area is that you're going to make as a paddock. And then you can look at that. You can look at how many animal units you have, and there's calculations to figure that out. And there's charts that you can go off of to say what an actual animal unit is. Most of the time, the charts that I've found kind of base it off of 1,000-pound animals. So, and then everything else kind of goes from there as to, one animal unit would be that 1,000-pound animal. If it's more than that weight, then it's going to be more than one animal unit, and if it's less than that weight, it'd be less than one animal unit. So another good book that we like that goes into a little bit of detail on that is the Small Scale Livestock Farming. And inside this book, on I think it's page 24 actually, you can kind of tell I've been in and out of this book quite a bit, but it has this chart here, and it's a animal units table, and it goes through mature bulls of beef cows down through dairy animals, sheep, goats, horses, and pigs even, and it tells you roughly their average weight and how many animal units they would be. And then towards the back of the book, there is the different calculations that you would use for like forage quality, animal units, and stock density on there. That way you can kind of judge all of that out as well. But like I said, on the Dirt to Soil book, he actually goes into detail about, over the years, he changed who he did his soil samples through, because there's only, if I remember right from the book, there's actually only 2, as of the time that he wrote the book at least, companies out there that tested for particular items that he was looking for on the soil test. And you really needed those items to be able to move forward with his program. He talks a lot about being able to walk out into the yard or the pasture, and you should be able to stick a spade shovel into the soil and it should look like cake batter. If it doesn't, then you don't really have the microbes and all the organisms working and functioning to their potential. So one of the things that you can do with that, and he talks about how we use like synthetic fertilizers to try to, you go out and you get a normal soil test, and it talks about, they'll tell you you need to add nitrogen or add something to it. You go out there and you get a synthetic fertilizer and you put it on your area, and then next thing you know, you get another soil test, and guess what? You probably need that same stuff again. And the reason for that is it basically makes using that, the way he talks about it is using the synthetic fertilizers, the ground becomes dependent on that synthetic fertilizer. So you have to continue to use it, and it's basically it's not helping the soil at all. It's making it dependent on it. Versus if you use more natural means of creating that organic matter. So like we've done the bale grazing here, and we've showed results on that on our previous videos, where in the past we had always thrown a round bale out there. They eat it, naturally they waste some of it, and his book teaches you to look at that in a different way. What they pull out of the round bale feeder, they lay on, they step on, they urinate on, and they push into the soil. Don't look at that as waste. Look at that as putting organic material back into the soil. If you look at it that way, then you don't think of any of that out there as waste. So like in the past, that the way we did it, it was what we looked at as waste. I would either push into a pile and burn it, or push into a pile and carry it over and run it into the compost, and then when it composted down, quite a while later, then I would throw it back through the manure spreader and spread it back out again. Just depending on how much of it was and what options we had available at the time. Composting part of it, it took a long time to get it to break down in the methods that we were using. So we weren't going out there rotating it. We weren't worrying about using a thermometer to check it and see what the temperature was, or none of that stuff. So, but he basically talked about how, once he started using those methods of rotating the cows, rotating his sheep behind them, because the cow will eat certain items and they're going to leave others. And then how you get the... You just want to be in the video, aren't you, Buck? You too? You jealous? So, get down. So then...
Don't come over
you
here.
have to focus on what your ultimate goal is, and your goal is to raise the healthier animals. Well, as he was improving his soil by rotating the animals around, he was also improving the herd health, because by moving them away from their feces onto fresh grass on a regular basis, that was allowing him to reduce the amount of chemical wormers that he needed to use for the animals as well. He wasn't having problems with the parasites, the bugs, those kind of things, because he could move his cows off of that area, come in a few days later, run some sheep through there, come in a few days later after that, run chickens through there to clean up that area of the manure. They'd scratch through the manure, break it up before the life cycle of the pests for the bugs were getting into the picture. So that is ultimately our goal. We just are not quite to that point yet. We have started some of it over the last couple of years. We do rotate them temporarily during the day, but ultimately for a water source we still have to move them back to the one main area overnight. So that is one of our goals for this year, is to add additional water sources out in the pasture. That way we can rotate them into different paddocks permanently for the day, and that way we can move towards creating enough paddocks out there to where we can rotate them every day, and then that will allow the other paddocks that aren't in use to have rest and regrowth and those type of things, to where the ultimate goal would be not to taking the grass down any lower than 4 inches. So that's going to take quite a bit of management practice to do that. We're going to be looking at our stock density rate. I'll actually have to calculate that a little bit different now, because our herd size is a little bit bigger than it was the last time I calculated it out, the start of last year. So, but last year, with the amount of calves that we had at the smaller size, and then only having the bull and 4 cows that were producing, we were able to actually go down and increase our stock density rate, but we could push them down to, for our needs of the temporary paddocks, I could get them all the way down to an 80 by 80 paddock, and they would be able to do that paddock for 3 days, just grazing it daily, not during the nighttime. So it works. We've been able to turn areas of our pasture that used to be nothing but weeds, and even though I would go through there with 2,4-D and try to control the weeds, it just looked like I was basically coming through there and spraying Miracle-Gro on it. It seemed like I was trying to control it with chemicals, and it was really honestly making things worse than it was making it better. Since we started grazing it, now that area is producing nice. There was one of our previous videos, I talked about the area back behind where they had some of the dirt that came out of the area where they attempted to dig a pond supposedly, but really I think they were just trying to sell dirt and make money off of it, because they never made any effort for an actual pond. But there was a lot of clay back there, so when I moved that for over a year, I mean, you didn't get anything to grow back there but just dust. We went through there with a spike tooth harrow, went through there with a disc, tried radishes to plant back there to try to break some of that up. Nothing worked. I grazed the cattle on it for a season. Now I've got clover and grasses growing in that area, and it looks pretty nice. So the cows have definitely worked well for us to do that. So like I said, once we get the water source this year, that will allow us to be able to move them through And then my other thought is, now that we have goats, if I have woody areas, I'll be able to use them as well to knock some of that down first, and then I can send the cows through there, and then preferably send our chickens through after that. We did the experiment this year with chicken tractors and meat birds, or well, last year I guess. So this year we're going to be raising more meat birds in a different style chicken tractor, and we'll move them daily. So I'm going to attempt to put them out in the pasture. So until we get the new water sources established, while the cows are off of the main area out into the other paddocks, I'm going to bring the chickens in the tractor in those smaller areas and let them clean up some of the waste in those areas. And then we'll move the chickens out before we bring the cows back in. So, and then we'll just keep rotating everybody around. But like, my ultimate goal would be to run the cows into a different paddock at least every 3 days, and then bring the chickens in behind them after a couple of days. I'd like to give the grass in that area at least a 48-hour rest before I bring the chickens through on it. So, but like I said, these are definitely two books that I would recommend, and we refer back to quite often. So Gabe Brown's Dirt to Soil, and then Small Scale Livestock Farming by what was that? Carol Ekarius, I think. Not sure on that one, if I'm saying that right or not.
Ekarius.
Yeah. So, but those two are definitely good books. The Small Scale Livestock Farming book makes mention of Alan Savory a few times, and so does the Gabe Brown book. So Brittany and I have also taken some of the courses through the Savory Institute as well, so they go well with those books. So, but if you have any questions, don't hesitate to comment below. I'll try and answer them to the best I can, and we'll see you on the next one.